Wireless companies have been piling hundreds of billions of dollars into 5G infrastructure in the U.S. over the last few years, but haven't really been reaping the benefits so far. But it seems that 2024 may be the year that things seem to change, at least for a few telecom giants. According to our next guest, joining us now is Keith Snyder, CFRA Research Senior Equity Analyst. Keith, it is good to see you. So it's interesting, Keith, your point is that, listen, these wireless companies, we know they've dedicated a lot of time and effort and a whole lot of money to 5G, Keith, but they haven't really kind of monetized that yet, at least in a kind of meaningful way. Maybe to start, Keith, I'm just interested, why is that? What are the hurdles here that you would outline, both on consumer and enterprise?
Sure. I mean, this is kind of the first generation that we've seen that just providing connectivity services isn't enough. So, looking back at 4G LTE, 4G, 3G, just, being able to connect people to each other, that was good enough for wireless companies. With 5G, you have so many other alternatives. You have, Wi-Fi 6, you have satellite internet coming out, with Starlink, and Amazon's planning a big network. You have competition from all sides. And so now it's become a services game. And really what we're seeing is, these companies are going to need to, one, communicate to customers what they can offer, but two, really redefine their business model, as on the consumer side especially. People didn't care about 5G. I mean, 5G is nice to have, but when they tried to push price increases, adding, $10, $15 per month for 5G services, people really pushed back and they walked back on that really quickly. And so consumers just don't want 5G and they don't want to pay more for 5G. So, it's going to be interesting to see how, these companies monetize the hundreds of billions that they're pouring into these networks every year.
When do you expect these companies to be able to eventually monetize? Is that soon, or are we still ways out from that?
I mean, we've seen it in somewhat of an indirect way with fixed wireless access. And so that's basically providing broadband service via 5G network. The issue is, you have companies like AT&T and Verizon who have existing wireline broadband businesses. So they have to be really careful about what markets they roll these services out to so they don't cannibalize their own businesses. T-Mobile's been pushing really hard on the FWA front. But at the end of the day, given that fixed wireless access customers share the same network as wireless customers, it becomes a congestion issue. And so what we're seeing is companies, kind of cap the number of customers they're willing to sign up, especially, on the AT&T and Verizon side. But, looking to when they can actually fully monetize it is probably going to be next year, if not another year beyond that. It's going to be the enterprise customers who are, really clamoring for the really cool technologies that we're seeing with 5G, network slicing, low latency communications, IoT networks. These are all going to be big money makers. It's just no one's really fleshed out the software side of things, and no one really has an idea of how to deploy this on a large scale.
And Keith, I've been doing a lot of reporting on India and the opportunity there for media companies due to the expansion of 5G. So when you're looking at the international rollout of 5G, are there certain regions that you think could benefit more amid greater 5G adoption?
Yeah, I mean, you spoke to India. That's an area that, when you look at like the Nokias and Ericssons of the world, that's a big aspect of their business right now, is getting these networks rolled out in the developing nations. Established nations, the US, Canada, China, they already have been rolling out 5G more or less at the same pace. But there's still a huge underserved market, especially in India, that we're seeing. I mean, that country alone, they're still finishing 4G networks. So 5G is, while they're starting to roll it out, it's still kind of on the horizon. Especially, as we look to a way to monetize it. But yeah, so these are, big countries that have a huge opportunity for revenue. It's just, I think the US is going to be the test bed for a lot of these cool new technologies. And it's just, we haven't seen them come out yet in any meaningful way.
And Keith, let's dig into some names here for viewers. Looking at your list here, you got a positive outlook, you said, for T-Mobile, for Verizon, for AT&T as well. How come, Keith? Kind of walk us through why you're positive on those names.
So So I'm very positive on T-Mobile. We have a strong buy opinion on them right now. They're leading the pack in terms of 5G. They're leading the pack in terms of the next generation of 5G, which is the 5G standalone standard, and that's where the enterprise money is going to start to flow in. AT&T, we actually have a hold opinion on right now. They had a lot going on in terms of the Time Warner deal set them back a few years. And the debt load is not exactly looking great for that company. And Verizon, we actually have a sell on. We think they're more or less dead last in 5G rollouts. They more or less bet the farm on millimeter wave, which is really, really fast, but it's really hard to propagate that signal to consumers, especially in urban environments. And so they had to step back. They bought a lot of mid-band spectrum, which is really, really valuable during the C-band auction. And so we see them more or less, 12 to 18 months behind T-Mobile in terms of their 5G rollout. And so T-Mobile has a great first mover advantage. AT&T is, kind of bringing up the next second place position, and Verizon's kind of in a third place position. And, Dish is well behind, or sorry, EchoStar now is well behind the other three in terms of network rollouts.
All right, well, we'll be keeping our eye on some of those names. Keith Snyder, thank you so much for joining us.